Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Mag Zaywad and I'm the Chief Veterinary Officer for Green Cross Vets. Thank you for tuning in today as we discuss all things COVID. I'd like to introduce you to the panel. We have Dr. Kirsty Sexwell on my right, Veterinary Behavioural Medicine Specialist and consultant to our animal referral hospitals. And on my left, I have Dr. James Carroll, our National Operations Manager for our specialist and emergency hospitals at Green Cross. Firstly, I'd just like to remind you all that we have Jasmine here, our producer, who is going to be feeding us the questions that you are going to pose to us, and we'll try and attempt to answer those questions as best we can today. I'd also like to let you know that vets are an essential service. We have been all the way through COVID, and we are open for business to see your pets, whether it's during the day or evening or 2 o'clock in the morning. Green Cross emergency and general practice hospitals are open 24/7. We'd like to also remind you that our pet barn stores are open for business. We have our zero contact, click and collect, and our same day service offering. So please remember to visit our pet barn stores for everything for your pets. I guess one of the things that has affected us during lockdown is that we sort of behave differently. A lot of things have changed for us, whether it's good or bad, and I guess the same's happened for our pets. So, Kirsty, how has that affected our pets, this lockdown period that we've had?
That's an excellent question. I think some people have really relished being at home, working from home. Other people are desperate to go back to work, to actually be in that community space that they work in. And I think it's the same for some pets as well. I think some pets really like having their owners at home, and it's fabulous. And this is everything I needed. Christmas has come every day. And there are other pets who are going, oh, please go back to work. Please go back to work, because my routine is not the same. I am not able to sleep as much as I normally do. And, maybe people aren't aware, but dogs and cats are supposed to rest somewhere between 16 to 18 hours a day, not in one go. Doesn't that sound wonderful? 16 to 18 hours sleep. I could do with that.
I think I may actually be a dog. It sounds very attractive to me.
It's fabulous from my perspective. But I think if you're a dog, regardless of age, or a cat, and you're used to having a routine where your owners go to work, and then all of a sudden they're home all the time, they're dragging you out for walk after walk after walk, and then somebody else says, well, I haven't been for a walk today, I'll go for another walk. And the poor dog, has done 10, 15 walks a day. Oh, I've only done 10 Ks a day, I'm now doing 20 Ks a day. I think some of these dogs are very tired of this, or they're getting fitter and fitter. And I have seen dogs actually throw themselves on the pavement when they're out walking, going, that's it, done, dusted, carry me home.
So there's actually too much walking that you can do for dogs?
Absolutely. Because, again, remember, they're being a predator species, they're probably, not to say a lot of them don't like walks, please don't think that, but I think they like walks to go out and be able to sniff things, check things out, do it at their own pace, and there are dogs who really hate walks at the best times. And if you really hate going out because your world is full of boogeymen out there, imagine being subjected to that 4 times a day, let alone twice a day. So, in Australia, we've kind of been brainwashed that you're a very bad owner if you don't walk your dog at least 20 minutes twice a day. But it really depends on the dog. There are dogs who really don't, they're not social. They're, perhaps we should say, they're introverts, and they don't find the need to go out that important. And there are other dogs that are extroverts that love it. So I guess it's, horses for courses, as they say, and what suits one dog may not suit another dog.
So similar to us. Some people love runs, like myself, and others can happy to sit on the couch and drink some wine. James, I know that
You just describe me.
James, I guess, being in the emergency and specialist space, you've also seen some changes in what you're seeing coming through the door.
We have. We've seen a few changes looking at our raw data that indicate potentially some side effects from our COVID-19 lockdown. So the first thing that we noticed was in our feline population. We've noticed an increase of FLUTD or urinary tract conditions. And obviously, this is an emergency condition that we see with cats having difficulty urinating, or blood in their urine, discomfort. And there is an underlying link of this towards anxiety or behavioural issues, which underpins the entire condition, which is an interesting thing to try and explain to someone when we're dealing with a urinary tract issue. But the underlying issue to that is anxiety in most cases, and we've certainly seen a spike of that in our feline population. The other really noticeable thing that we've seen in our hospitals is an increase in the incidence of dogfight injuries that we're seeing. So obviously with people being out and about and walking these dogs, and we're seeing that in a great number, the number of interactions that dogs are having with other dogs has gone up fairly dramatically. And with an increase in those numbers, we are seeing an increase in negative interactions, which and Kirsty can speak this much better than I can, but are mainly fueled from anxiety and dogs acting out of fearfulness. So we have seen an increase in those incidents, and some of those injuries have been very serious that we're seeing from dogs. So I think a credit to regulation with responsible ownership of dogs over time. In my career, I've seen a decrease in dogfight injuries and in dogs being hit by cars and things like this. And with COVID occurring, we've seen a little bit of a regression in those numbers and a whole bunch of injuries, which to some of our younger vets are new and interesting, but it's a little bit of a flashback to before responsible pet ownership was the norm.
Yes, and I still remember those days, all those hit by cars and dog fights that used to come in. So, Kirsty, with what James has been saying about the increase in dog fights, some of these dog fights have occurred at local dog parks. So I just wanted your sort of take on dog parks and how we should approach those.
Yeah, well, I guess there's dog parks and there's dog parks. There are some really good dog parks that I've seen, and one where I used to take my older dog, who I don't have anymore, unfortunately, and all the dogs there were really well mannered. They were really well behaved. They were practicing social distancing. They'd obviously been socialised well. Everything was great. And there were other dog parks, and I took my dog there. I went there once, and I said, "No, I'm not taking my dog back to that place because the other dogs just don't know how to behave. They don't have the idea of how to greet dogs, and that's a really important thing. If one dog doesn't know how to greet another dog, that can cause problems. They're supposed to sniff the front, then sniff the back, and then work from there. But if you just roar up to another dog because you don't have good manners, it's probably like someone in this COVID-19 that we're going through roaring up to someone and hugging them. Well, that's not socially acceptable anymore, and it isn't for some dogs and never has been. And this is part of the issue, I think, that they're not well socialised, they go to a dog park, they've never been there before, or maybe they've only been there once in a month or once every 2 months. You can imagine that these dogs are going to have issues with that. So, yeah, I actually saw a couple of cases recently where the dogs have got into a fight, not only with strange dogs, but at home because they're not used to having all that interaction that is now going on when everybody is home
Yeah.
as well.
The share house rules have changed.
Yes, I saw that in my household this morning with my two kids. One of the things that's really interesting is we've seen an increase in the number of adoptions throughout the last few months, and our Pet Barn stores rehome a lot of kittens that are actually coming from shelters. So we've seen a 30% increase in the number of kitten adoptions over the last 3 months. And our data also shows that dog adoptions are up by at least 33%. Now, we all know that pets are great for us and adopting animals is a wonderful thing to do. Pets are great for us this time of year when we are in this COVID lockdown. A lot of people in isolation crave companionship, and dogs provide a lot of companionship, especially to people who are socially isolated or don't have interaction with a lot of other people. So what we're finding is also that there's been a lot of people asking us, well, this is great. We're adopting all these puppies and kittens, and I'm one of them. I've just adopted a puppy as well. But how do we socialise them, Kirsty? Because we can't really do what we normally do with them, like puppy preschool and all those sorts of things.
I think there's a lot of things you can do. There's no doubt about that. That I think that once the puppy is fully vaccinated, you can still take the puppy out. Be careful where you take them. Be careful who you socialise them with. If you have a neighbour who's got a new puppy, then maybe now that we're allowed to visit people, or one of your relatives has, take the puppy, let them interact with not only puppies but well-mannered older dogs, dogs that have manners. And remember that puppies, like people, have different personalities. Some are introverts, some are extroverts, some are timid, some are not. And it's important to remember that 20% of dogs have an anxiety disorder, and it's not because of the way that people treat them. It's a genetic problem. It's inherited from mum and dad and grandparents and all the rest of it. So we have to recognise that if this dog is inherently anxious, then some of these things that we expose them to, if we don't do it in a proper manner, we don't uh, if we don't overwhelm them, they'll get used to a lot of stuff. But sometimes we can overwhelm them. So, they can go out for outings, they can go out in the car, they can go out for walks as long as they're vaccinated. And be careful where you take them. And I would always say to people, before you take your dog to a dog park, go and watch what happens in that dog park without the dog. If you find the dogs are all running wild with each other and nobody is actually observing them, everybody's just having a cup of coffee talking to other owners, and nobody's watching the dogs, it's probably not an ideal place to take a new puppy. But if everybody's paying attention, probably a good place to try.
Yeah, and that's interesting because one of the biggest things that we find really challenging is that a lot of people don't actually understand what signs of anxiety are for pets. And I guess being vets, all of us, and James, you would see this too. You see those animals that come in, and they're highly anxious, but clients aren't really aware, or pet owners aren't really aware of those signs. So, what are some of the signs that you would see when you have pets in your hospitals?
Yeah, those symptoms are often relatively obvious to people who work with dogs all the time, but to owners, they can be unclear. And one of the things that really stands out to me is when you're watching clips on the internet and there's people doing things and interacting with dogs, and sometimes you look at those dogs and say that's a disaster waiting to happen. And reading their body language is really important because it's rare that they do just do it out of nowhere. They're often giving quite a few hints and quite a few behaviours which people can pick up on if they know what to look for. And I guess some of the classic ones that we'll see are dogs who are licking their lips and performing these sorts of behaviours, who are often very nervous, dogs who are fidgeting, dogs who are constantly moving around the room. And a great trick that I actually learned from one of Kirsty's colleagues was to just let the dog do its thing in the room. And a normal dog will actually chill out and go to sleep after a few minutes because there's not that much of interest in a small box with what you're having this conversation. And a nervous dog will not settle. It'll continue pacing, avoiding you, and those fidget behaviours, licking their lips, and those sorts of things are surefire signs that that dog is highly anxious, and you need to proceed with a lot of caution.
That's right.
And much in the way that we would see people, some people open, want to have a chat, kind of people you'd meet at the bar and have a great conversation with straight away. Other people, we have to let them sort of move their own speed and come to us.
So Kirsty, in your practice, obviously, all you see are anxious, fearful dogs. What's your take on, how they present and people's understanding of their own dog's behaviour?
I don't see all my patients are not anxious, fearful dogs. I do see neurotypical or normal dogs as well. But mostly they do have some sort of anxiety disorder. I think if I can just add to what James was saying before, that what we see in dogs, everybody's familiar with the flight and fight. If the dog is growling, if the dog is really running away from you, hiding behind your legs, then that's time to think that, yep, we recognise those dogs as being anxious. The lip licking, the yawning is another one we see in a veterinary hospital a lot. Stretching, shaking off as if they've just got out of the water and they haven't had a bath and they haven't had a swim. But I think the other one that vets and owners often mistake as being a dog that's actually relaxed is the dog that allows the vet to examine them. The dog is sitting on the table. It's like, what a good dog you are. You're just sitting there letting everybody have a look in your ears and mouth. And that dog is actually petrified. It is frozen. And that freeze response is the fourth F we talk about. We talk about flight and fight, freeze and fiddle. The fiddle ones are hard to recognise because if your dog's always yawning, you kind of don't even pay attention to it. And I find that happens when I talk to owners about this, they say, oh, yeah, my dog's always shaking off and it's always yawning. I just thought it was tired. No, it's not. It's getting stressed in that situation. But the frozen dog, I think, is something that we need to be just as careful with, because if you're really petrified, sitting still, you can sit there for so long and then something happens. Guess you go to flight and fight.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I guess, having worked in practice for a long time, the hard bit is actually making sure that people actually recognise that, because when a dog doesn't give you those signs, or does give you those signs for a while and you ignore them, I guess one of the next signs is just biting.
Mm.
And unfortunately, when that involves a child, that can be quite dangerous.
Can I just poke in there before? The other thing, while you're talking about that, just biting, dogs always give signals. They always give signals. It's just that sometimes they're so rapid, we miss them because as veterinarians, we're busily, examining them, looking at, listening to their heart or looking in their ears or doing stuff, and we miss those subtle signs. I think the other time is that years ago, and hopefully nobody does it now, we used to want to knock the growl out of the dog. It's bad for the dog to growl. I think it's fabulous when dogs growl. The dog is telling you, I'm scared, I'm frightened, I'm in pain. Please keep your distance. And the problem that you're talking about is knock the growl out of the dog. What are we going to experience as vets? The dog that's going to bite because somebody's taken that sequence out of that dog's normal repertoire.
Yeah. So the growls are good, guys. Just remember that the animal's telling you something. What we are hearing is a lot of our clients and a lot of dog owners are actually asking us about how we can make the transition from our COVID lockdown a lot easier for our pets, because we understand that while we're at home and we're interacting with our pets a lot, their routine has changed and everything. How can we make that an easier transaction for them? Transition for them. Sorry.
That's all right. I think the most important thing is to have a set routine. That's really important. All our routines are kind of up the creek at the moment. I listen to people on the radio and they say, "Oh, I decided to get out of my pajamas for dinner." Well, okay, that's fine, but sooner or later you're going to get out of your pajamas early in the morning, and if the dog is used to you always getting out to have a shower, put your clothes on, then you probably need to go back to doing that, as much as it seems like a weird thing to do when you're not going anywhere and it's really comfortable just hanging around in your trackies or whatever. I think it's really important to have routines not only for the owner but for the pet, so that they still get fed at a specific time, they get walked at a specific time, things that you're going to be able to actually continue on with when you go back to work. And I think the other thing that's really important is that if you do go out, and you should go out periodically and leave the dog or the cat at home, set up a video camera, eavesdrop on your house. You'll be surprised what your pet does when you're not home, and that will give you a lot of clues as to whether you may have a pet that's going to transition really easily or a pet that's already having problems.
Yeah, and I think one of the nice things about being at home is that you do get to spend a lot more time with your pet, and you are able to see these behaviours that you wouldn't have recognised, I guess, if you were at work. James, one of the other things we're seeing in our general practices at the moment is actually a lot of vomiting and diarrhea in pets, especially dogs. And I have a theory, but I guess you've seen a lot more of them come through. What's your theory on that?
It is one of the other things that we are seeing more of gastroenteritis cases, particularly hemorrhagic gastroenteritis cases, and these are often predicated by stressful events. So um, it's a very difficult area to understand explicitly with that link, but we are seeing an increased number of those cases. One of the other things that we're also seeing is an increased number of cases generally, both within our emergency and specialty hospitals, but also within our network. And I think part of this has been that people are spending more time with their pets, and they are noticing things which may have been there for some time. And this is a fantastic opportunity for us as healthcare providers to actually help a lot of animals who may have been suffering in silence previously. So that stronger or more obvious or more active human animal bond is actually something that has been a big positive for us as clinicians who want to help patients, in that people are able to present their patients generally because they're noticing these things and have the ability to get to the vet more readily. We are seeing obviously some people who are struggling to get to the vet, and so we have had more people calling us, seeking advice. And I know that within the Green Cross group, we've actually launched other initiatives to make it easier for people to be able to get in contact with us, including a web vet service offering tele-advice as a tele-triage service to provide reassurance for people or advice that people do or don't need to come into whatever it is?
That's right, and we're seeing a lot of people ringing us using WebVet, asking us questions around their pets because for a lot of people, some of them are actually isolating themselves and want advice and want to know whether they need to come and see a vet. And that service is great because it allows people to have some peace of mind, understanding that if they can't leave the house, they can still access a veterinarian to assess their pet online through a video consult. So that's actually something that we've provided our customers over the last few weeks. Kirsty, I wanted to ask you as well, you know, one of the things that we often get asked a lot is, as we're, you know, are we seeing a lot more or a lot less separation anxiety now that we've been in COVID? And what's your thoughts about what will happen after COVID restrictions are lifted and everyone's back at work or back at school?
Oh, my crystal ball's a bit fuzzy at the moment. I'm not really sure exactly what's going to happen. I think this is the million-dollar question that's around at the moment. I think we're probably more likely to see animals that were already, perhaps had a genetic predisposition to be anxious and to get separation anxiety. We're going to see a lot of them because if they've been with their owners now 24/7, 2 months, 3 months, whatever it is, and then suddenly to be left while people go to work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, I think that's going to be really difficult for some of these animals. The other concern that I have is the animals that have separation anxiety that's been diagnosed and managed really, really well, and the animals cope with people going out. Suddenly, they've been with their owners all the time again, and now they're going back to that other normal, or new normal, whatever that is. I think that we might see an increase in those behaviours. I don't know. There's a couple of studies going on internationally at the moment trying to look for what happens with COVID, what happens with that. And we're also trying to look at is the owner's behaviour during that time going to affect what happens to the animals. And when I say owner's behaviour, you're a runner. I'm obviously not. But if you're out running with your dog and you take it out 4 or 5 times a day and then the dog doesn't have that, is that just because the routine is different? Or is it that now we've got an anxiety disorder? I think it's going to be really interesting to see how that turns out. And certainly with my little dog, it's really interesting now. My routine probably hasn't changed that much. I'm still working from home a lot, but I'm also going into the clinic and seeing cases on a regular basis. So my dog has fairly low expectations of what I'm going to do with her. I live in a house, but I don't have a yard. So the only way she goes out is on a lead, and she's a nervous little dog, so she goes out. We take her out to eliminate, bring her back in, and that's really her expectations of me, plus to give her medication, plus to feed her. My husband used to work really long hours, 5, 6, 7 days a week. Now he is at home all the time. Her expectations of him have entirely changed because he likes having a dog around. I mean, he brought the dog home for Pete's sake. So I always say, it's your little dog. Anyway, now he's had time to do the gardening. The garden's starting to look better. And when he goes to the tip, he takes the dog. And so the dog goes to the tip, the dog does this, the dog does it. And now every day she expects either to go for a car ride or she has to go for a walk. And she really pesters him to get that. I don't get pestered. I get pestered for a pat occasionally, bit of a treat, other things. But her expectations of him are very, very different. So periodically, she's crate trained, she loves her crate. So periodically we go out and we put her in the crate and I said, you're just going to have to get used to this, girlfriend, because sooner or later, this is your new normal, is going to go back to your old normal. And she's coping really well with that. And that's probably another thing I'm doing to try and transition to the fact that you don't go to the tip every day, you don't get a car ride, and you don't get an hour and a half long walk every day either. And sometimes you're just going to have to go out in the crate while we work.
Yeah, and what you just said about crate training is really, really important because just having adopted a puppy, one of the things that I did straight away was obviously make sure that I was doing some crate training with my puppy, and she, Sky, she's now 14 weeks old. She loves that crate. All good things happen in that crate, and she can go there when she wants to get away from people. It's a safe place for her. It's so important, Kirsty, isn't it, to make sure that your dogs have a safe place?
Absolutely. Dogs, like people, need a safe place to go, and they need somewhere that they know that they can go and rest there, that's comfortable for them, that they can get away from people, they can go and have a nap, crates when you're crate training, treats in there, feed them, do all sorts of stuff. Crate training is not a bad idea for cats either, by the way. But crates are never meant as a punishment. You never, ever put your dog in the crate because it's been bad. The crate is always somewhere as a refuge, a den, a safe place to go. And a lot of animals really, really like their crate. My dog, if I tell her it's crate time, she just potters down, and in she goes into a crate. There's no argument about that. But if you haven't been crate trained, that can be a problem. The big problem is when people say, I'm going to put my dog in the crate, it will be in the crate now. When I go to work at 9 and I'm not going to take it out till 6, that is not on.
Yeah.
They're not meant to be crated for that long. It should be somewhere that they feel comfortable and secure. Like we all need somewhere to go away, and I know maybe like you guys, my house used to be open, people would come in and go all the time. I felt at one stage I was running a motel and I could get one lot of sheets off the bed and put another one on. And some nights I used to say to my husband, I'm just going to go to bed now. And he'd look at me and say, no, I just need to shut the door and just have my own space. And we all need that at times. And I think for dogs, if we can do that, and with cats, it's a really comfortable thing to do.
I managed to write down here that I need to keep my animals safe and have low expectations of them. So this is quite good for me in terms of what I'm aiming for now.
So I guess one of the things that we know a lot more of now, the fact that we've actually had a couple of months since we've been in lockdown. A lot has happened in terms of our understanding of COVID and how it actually affects pets in terms of infection signs and how we actually deal with animals in our home if we do have COVID. So James, do you want to give an update on the findings that we've had so far? Just an overview.
So we've obviously seen that there have been some experimental studies where they have induced COVID-19 related infection into some cats, and that was at very high levels, that the virus was instilled into these cats, and they actually transferred it to other cats in that scenario. I guess most famously, we've still got the tiger in New York who showed symptoms of COVID-19. And it has been isolated from both dogs and cats who have been in high volume contact with the virus itself. At this stage, there's no evidence that these dogs and cats who managed to contract or have the virus isolated from them have played a role in human transmission. And I think that's such an important point to make, because at the peak of our panic around COVID-19, there were instances and hysteria around people wanting to give up their dogs and cats because of this concern. None of that has played out. There's no evidence that they've got a role in transmission. And more so than that, I guess we know that there may be a chance, and in our clinics and our hospitals, we are treating dogs and cats coming from houses with confirmed cases of COVID-19 as having the potential to have COVID-19, which means we're having extra precautions within our clinics to deal with them. But our pets are such an important part of our lives, and for a lot of people, I know during this pandemic, having the companionship and the bond with their pets has been so important for their own mental health and in coping with the challenges that we have. And there's obviously been a large spike in demand for human mental health support at this time. And the bond and the things that we're seeing from our clients and their dedication and the importance of that human-animal bond can't be emphasised enough. And it's great. It's great to see that things have calmed down, and whilst we know that there is a risk that they can isolate the virus from certain dogs and cats, and it could be on their fur, that they haven't played a role in transmission, and everyone's been able to self-isolate with their furry friends and have the uplift and the benefit of that companionship.
Yeah, that's so true, James. And I've been asked a lot in the media whether all the animals that are being adopted at the moment are going to end up in some shelter once COVID is over. And I guess what I always consider is that most people don't make the decision lightly to adopt a pet. A lot of people probably were considering adopting a cat or dog, and then suddenly COVID hit and they found themselves in a situation where they could, because they had the time to, I guess, integrate them into their household, train them, crate train them, do all the things that we know we should be doing when we adopt a new pet into our home.
We are seeing some great names, you know, there's
Oh my
some
goodness,
cats, you know, Pan and Demic
Yes.
coming in.
And COVID and Corona.
COVID and Corona, yeah, there's always, particularly in the age of the internet, it's great to see whenever disaster strikes, it's only a few minutes later that people...
Yeah, you can always judge people's names and their pets' names or how old they are by the time, by their names. I guess one of the things the point that James made was really, really important. The transmission of COVID is mainly human to human. We can't stress that enough. And one of the things that we often say is that pets are part of our household. We treat them like family, and we should be doing that anyway in isolation. If we have to be isolated because we're sick or we have COVID, our pets should stay in the home with us. We should always practice good hand hygiene. Always wash your hands before and after interacting with your pet, before and after eating. The other thing to remember is because pets live in such close proximity to us, we should treat them the same. So, with cats, we shouldn't actually have them outdoors. We should actually keep them indoors and part of our family structure, all the time, because we know that cats can get into lots of adventures after hours. We know that cats can, and people find it hard to believe, Kirsty, and I know you know this better than anyone else, how far cats can roam at night. There's lots of studies about that, and get into lots of mischief like cat fights and hit by cars, and unfortunately a lot of deaths occur in cats that are outdoors. But I guess we also want to answer some of the questions that might have come through. So if Jasmine, you wanted to feed us some questions.
Absolutely. I've got one here that has come through from Kaz, and Kaz asks, my dog loves me being at home, but is now quite vocal if I leave him, and my neighbour has mentioned it. Do you have any advice for me?
I think that one's for Kirsty.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a perfect example of what we were talking about, that this is the dog that may well have separation anxiety. I actually quite like dogs that are vocal or destructive when they have anxiety problems, because somebody's going to notice them. The neighbour is going to complain, and that dog is going to get help. It's the one that spends all day just pacing up and down and drooling. There's no signs for the owner to see when they come home. I guess first thing I would probably do is work on crate training. I would think about using some products, and depending on how bad that vocalization is, there's a lot of products that are over the counter that people can buy, from synthetic pheromones to products that are milk proteins that can help with those animals that have got anxiety. If that is really getting to be problematic, probably time to go and see your vet, seek some behavioural advice, because sometimes these animals need anti-anxiety medication. They do not need sedatives, so please don't think that they're going to be sedated. But if they're anxious, it's really important that we help them over that anxiety, and your vet's going to be the best place to go.
That's really good advice, Kirsty. Jasmine, do you have any other questions that have come through?
We've got Renee, and she says, my 13-year-old diabetic cat, I have a 13-year-old diabetic cat. Do you have any suggestions on how to wean him off having 24/7 attention for the last few months? I'm concerned that his diabetes may get out of control when he's suddenly on his own at home all day.
Okay, well, I guess another one for Kirsty.
Yeah, look, it's really interesting, because I don't think that all animals are going to have a problem when we go back to work. As I said at the very beginning, I think there are animals that, they like being with us, but, getting some of their own space back isn't going to be that traumatic. 13-year-old being a diabetic, it may be problematic. Now is the time to perhaps start with some pheromone products. You can buy them, as a diffuser or a spray, get them used to being home by themselves. This is where I love crate training for cats, because we can give them a nice safe haven, and just go out for short periods of time so that the cat gets used to the new routine. Maybe you go out at 9 o'clock in the morning, get a cup of coffee, come back, and so the cat goes, oh, they're going out again, and then you can do 2 more trips and 3 more trips, but make them short. That's really, really important. Don't think that, they can go from being left alone for, half an hour to 4 hours. It's not going to work that way. But pheromones are fabulous for these cases, I think, to just transition them out.
And diabetes is obviously a condition that we manage in dogs and cats through a lot of routine. Having specific feeding times, quantities is very important, and cats are often a form of diabetes similar to type 2 diabetes in humans, so there can be variations within their diabetic status. So during that time frame, it would be important to check in with your regular vet about their diabetes management plan. And potentially monitoring or keeping a very close eye on their diabetes status through that transition would be an important point to work with your vet on that management.
Yeah, these are really good questions, Jasmine. Can you feed us some more?
Yeah, we've got one from Sally. She has 3 huskies at home and she's been working from home for 7 weeks straight. She said, when I go back to work, should I do a few half days first?
Well, that's having 3 huskies in itself is a as an interesting interesting scenario. But Kirsty, how do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, look, I think, I would, even before you go back to work, start going out for a bit, see how they cope with you not being there. Again, I think videoing is something that's really, really important, and really everybody has access to an iPhone or some sort of gadget that videos these days. Just go out and see what the animal's doing when they're actually out. And then if they're coping for 10 minutes, half an hour, then half a day is probably exactly the way to do it. So it's a slow transition, but watch their behaviour while you're not back at work yet. That's going to be important, so that we actually have some information about what these 3 huskies are going to be doing. And, if we can slowly transition them back, perfect.
Yeah,
They might be going, hey, go back to work so I can sleep again.
There's been some great memes since COVID came along. Some of them where cats aren't happy we're home. That's a good one. Whereas and some of the dogs that are standing in the kitchen saying, I don't want to go on another walk. I mean, there's been some great ones, and some of those topics we've covered today. But I guess we will still take your questions. So if there's any other questions, Jasmine.
Should I give my pets extra food for the days when I return to the office?
Oh, let me tell you.
This is directed at me.
I think we've all found some comfort in food over the last 6 or 7 weeks in isolation. The most important thing is that, and we have in our Green Cross clinics, and we've confirmed this with other hospitals as well, we've actually seen an increase in vomiting and diarrhoea cases that are purely just because people are overfeeding their pets, and usually treats that are usually high in calories and fat. And treats are not meant to be food. They are actually meant to be treats. And it's a great way to train your pets, with rewards. But at the end of the day, one of the biggest problems that we have in our society, not just with our pets, but with ourselves, is the rise in obesity. And that comes with a heap of problems that we know in practice, like, makes arthritis worse. We've got problems with high blood pressure. We've got problems with diabetes in some species. So at the end of the day, the most important thing is please don't feed your pets as a way of showing them love. There are so many other ways, and Kirsty can attest to this, that we can actually enrich their lives, and some of the great products out there, Kirsty.
Oh, look, there's lots of things. And I guess I just want to put a little bit of a corollary on the throwing up business. Stress can do that too. Just like we were talking about cats that have urinary tract infections, stress has an enormous part to play. And so some of those memes when people, the dog's on top of the kitchen cupboard and the cats are like, I think there's an element that it really depends on the individual and the individual's personality. But yeah, there are lots of great products. I really like. I don't like talking about environmental enrichment, because we shouldn't be really having to enrich their lives. What we should be doing is meeting their environmental needs. And if we know that an animal has needs to play or needs to do things, then we can do that. There's a lot of great products for dogs. Some of them are expensive, some of them are not. Some of them you can make yourself. I mean, we all know about the toilet paper rush. We should have buckets of toilet paper rolls that we can use for our dogs and cats. We put a little bit of treats in there, do them up tight, let the dog or the cat open them up, get the treats out. But again, really interesting. I got some new treats for her because I thought this would be really good, in a puzzle toy. My dog believes if it's too hard to do, I'm not going to do it. Okay, I am not doing this puzzle toy. I'm not that interested in food, too much like hard work. And whereas other animals love it, and one of my colleagues, she's got a relatively young puppy, he would prefer to do a puzzle toy than eat the food out of his bowl. So it's horses for courses.
Right. Because is there any general comment you can make around the timing of feeding and separating yourself from the pet, or is that once again very horses for courses?
Look, it really depends. When I was at university, last millennium, I love saying that, makes me feel very wise. We were taught that dogs need to be fed either once a day or twice a day, and they had to have a day where they didn't eat at all. Now that we've done more studies and we see the individual variation, it's very different. You know, I was taught that cats graze. Not all cats graze. Some cats gobble things up. My dog's, well, I had two before, but I have one now. She is a midnight grazer. So she won't eat during the day. Don't make her work for her food. That's all too hard. But I hear her get up at 3 in the morning or 4 in the morning, and we joke that, oh, that dog from next door must have come in and eaten all your food while you're asleep because there's no food in the house at all. And yet I was taught at university dogs don't eat at night. I used to teach people that, but I can tell you it's very much on the individual. And I do like routines for some animals. But my dog would starve to death if she had a routine when her food went down because she may not want to eat for 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 hours. So, yeah, it's all very individual. But if you have a gobbler, you know, the one that you put the food down and it inhales the food, then you need routines. You need to be able to go, okay, here's your food. This is your allowance for the day, and you're just going to have to wait till the next meal. No opening the fridge door.
No, that's right. That's why they're so lucky that I don't open the fridge door. So we can actually control the portions that they have and help them to maintain their adequate body weight. So, Jasmine, do we have any more questions?
Yes, we might finish up with two more. This one is about vet visits. What should I do if I have an appointment at my local Green Cross clinic and I'm not feeling well and I need to self-isolate?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And one of the things that we've advised all our clients and our pet owners is to make sure you ring ahead. So the first thing is if you ring ahead and you explain that you're not well, we'll be able to advise you if it's a problem that we need to see. Then we will advise you the next course. We will probably take your pet from you or from the car and examine the pet and treat the pet in your absence if it needs to be seen. If it doesn't need to be seen, we may do a web vet consult or a video consultation, telemedicine, or if it's something that is a routine procedure, we may put that off until 2 weeks or 3 weeks later when you're feeling better. So the most important thing is not just with Green Cross, with any clinics, whether it's emergency or referral, is that you advise people when you're calling to make the appointment if you are unwell.
I think we've seen people be very understanding. We've obviously put in minimal contact procedures in all of our clinics, and that means that in the majority of our clinics, the clients aren't actually coming in right now. We're doing a lot of our consultation work over the phone. It's not interrupting our care for the patients, but it does just add a layer of communication to what we're doing. And I really have to commend and thank our clients for their understanding and working with us over this time. Obviously, we'll be easing that back in line with government regulations. And we've been busier and we've had to do, it's taking a little bit longer, but our clients have been fantastic and we're all doing it for the same reasons, which are to protect our staff and to protect our clients themselves from contracting COVID-19. So, a big thanks to our clients and to our staff who've done a fantastic job of providing the highest levels of customer service through this challenge.
Yeah, it has been challenging, but I think we've all met the challenge, and we really are appreciative of our clients who've understood that they may not have face-to-face contact with our veterinarians at times, but we're still able to provide a service for their pet, ensure that their health and welfare is looked after as well. Jasmine, any more?
Yeah, let's wrap it up. We've got one more from Liana, which is my dog has become more possessive of me. How do I help break that behaviour?
Well, this one we can put straight through the university.
I guess it depends on what you mean by more possessive. I think sometimes, the animals aren't really more possessive. They just want to be around us. And remember, when animals, I don't believe animals attention seek. I think what they're doing is looking for information. So what looks like more possessiveness is an animal who wants to know, so what do you want me to do? What would you like me to do now? What are we doing now? What is happening? And remember, your routine has changed. You're feeling different. And the dog is just looking for information. So this is where I go back to routines, help them with that, and then if it's not helping, time to seek professional help, and your vets are there to help you with good behavioural advice, or else you come and see a specialist and we can try and help you too.
That's great advice, Kirsty. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. It's been a pleasure to answer all your questions, and what's been more of a pleasure and privilege is having Dr. Kirsty Sexel on board. She is one of Australia's most well-known animal veterinary behavioural medicine specialists. In fact, internationally recognised as one of the leading experts. We're so privileged to have you, Kirsty.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time today. James, always a pleasure. And on behalf of the Green Cross hospitals and our pet barn stores and our animal referral and emergency centres, thank you so much for tuning in today, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.